Hey everybody, at home USA Water Polo Advanced underway here, week one. Greg Mescall, thanks for joining us here on Facebook Live. Starting off with a great conversation with some of our great coaches in the Olympic Development Program, talking today about athlete development, and the coaches joining us, Alicia Began, Taylor Dodson, Kristin Rodriguez. Appreciate all of them being here. To kind of kick things off, we'll have each of them just give us a little bit of background on how they got into ODP and coaching at this level where you're really focused on helping athletes get better and get to that next level. Kristin, I'll start with you. Kind of just tell us your intro into ODP and how that's progressed for you.
I think I got really lucky. So I was a newer coach, started coaching club, and I thought it was like this very small little thing. And then as I heard ODP starting, a couple of my athletes were trying out, like two, and I wanted to know that process. So I actually just went to one of the trainings, and then I just asked, like, hey, how do I get involved? And so I became a zone coach, and Natalie Benson actually has a huge part of that. Natalie was one that would always do clinics in our area, or the camps in our area. And so we just got to talking and hanging out, and she was going on a trip for Iowanas, and one coach couldn't make it, and I was like, oh, pick me. And so that's basically how I became an assistant coach, and then just never went away. I was able to continue it and go through and become the cadet coach.
Perfect. That's like, it's probably an old John Wooden quote or something, but like when opportunity meets preparation, right? And then you get a chance to go off and do your thing. Taylor, I'll swing it over to you. Tell us about your entry into the world of ODP.
So mine is kind of similar. I think I was in college coaching and looking for a way to get involved in USA Water Polo. And really, I think just reached out and said, hey, how can I help? And luckily, Ethan D'Amato was and still is the youth team coach, and he is my former coach, and needed a manager for the women's youth national team. And so I got to kind of hop onto a great staff and be a part of that for the last couple summers. So sometimes I feel a little disconnected not having the actual zone coaching. I feel like I joined the group kind of late, but I love spending my summers with USA Water Polo and getting to be with those athletes at that level.
Excellent. And Alicia, how about you?
I moved to Pennsylvania for nursing school, where I met Jim Starsenik, who runs the Northeast Zone. And he said, you're from California, let's get you on a pool deck. And if anyone knows Jim, he really is enthusiastic about water polo. So he brought me into that and pushed me to go to holiday camp, where I connected with Marcelo Leonardi, who was the youth coach at the time. And he asked if I wanted to volunteer to help out at one of the camps, and just kept going after that.
Excellent. And, it's interesting, and we have a bunch of questions. And for those that are watching on Facebook, if you have a question related to kind of athlete development as we're talking, feel free to add them in the comments. I'll kind of keep an eye. I can pass them along to the coaches. But all of you kind of talked about that opportunity coming up and just having the chance. And it was interesting, Alicia, you talked about going to Pennsylvania. A lot of people do this, and there is so much opportunity if you leave California. Not that there's anything wrong with coaching in California, but can you speak to just a little bit the chance you have if you're willing to travel a bit and maybe move? There's a lot of water polo that needs coaching beyond California.
There's a lot of water polo outside of California. I know California is that mecca of water polo, but there's programs all over throughout the nation that are small and getting bigger, and competition is growing. Just today, I was speaking with my college coach, and he told me of an opportunity that's popping up in a different state for a college job. And so by moving to a different area, you're bringing new knowledge and new skills, and that really is how I got into coaching.
I mean, and you're living that life right now too at Indiana, right? It's a chance to help not only get a job, but also kind of spread the water polo word in an area that maybe doesn't have it as much.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people in the state of Indiana don't know what water polo is. So our program takes a lot of pride in being that representation for the sport in our area. But we have athletes on our team from all over, from St. Louis, from Chicago area, from Cincinnati, Ohio. There really is more water polo out there than I think a lot of people in California realize. And there's a ton of opportunities if you're willing to take them.
Excellent. Well, let's jump into a little bit of the talk here about kind of developing athletes and helping them get better. And Kristin, I'll kind of start with you. And this is just very, very broad, right? But if you're thinking about a well-rounded water polo athlete, the attributes that someone wants to try and gather, maintain, put in their toolbox, if you will, to get better, what are the things that you see in the athletes that do this well?
Oh man, that do this well. I mean, the first thing that comes up for me, and I always say this to the athletes that come in, is their coachability, right? Like they're open-minded, just being open-minded to new ideas, especially coming from so many areas, right? Some get, dialed into, well, my club coach says this, and they actually told me not to do it that way. But just being open-minded that it might be just explained a little differently. So coachability is a really big one, especially with the age group that we're coaching at the cadet level. And then, I mean, the skills and I don't know are you talking about skills or just like general? I mean, I think,
it's, look, and we can dive into that, but I kind of want to just like that first impression, when you think about someone that's well-rounded, does anything else come to mind? But it sounds like you hit on that first thing, right? You're not going to be able to get better if you're not willing to be coached.
I think the coachability and then just a sense of confidence, right? I try and get into, working with 16, 15, 14-year-old female athletes. It's focus on what you're good at or great at, and then work on, your weaknesses. So focus on your strengths, work on your weaknesses, but don't focus on your weaknesses. And so having just that sense of, if you're going to do something and, say your shooting is your dominant or your, center play is your dominance, then really going in with that self-esteem, it shows.
And Kristin, I like the idea you talked about coachability, and I think a lot of coaches bring this up. But for you, what does that look like? Is it just someone who's always right by the coach and shows up? I picture kind of like the student that wants to please, and the old school cliche of like helping clean up the classroom and bring in the apple or whatever from 50 years ago. But
no,
for you, what does that look like?
That goes more into almost like a teacher's pet, which is nice. Like help your coaches clean up by all means. But in terms of coachability, I definitely think that it goes into, you're open. If I give you a suggestion, you're like, okay. And if you don't think it works for you, you don't need to argue. There are some really talented athletes and, oh, well, I've tried that. It doesn't work for me. And they feel the need to voice that. And it's not always something that necessarily needs to be voiced. It's just, you know what, I've considered it. Maybe I should consider it again, and just have that thought within. It doesn't need to be something that's verbalized, as well as, I mean, it is kind of the teacher's pet, so kind of what you were saying. But the one that's looking at you and you can tell that they're absorbing it. They're the sponge. Like they're taking it in and they go and they try it immediately and they fail, but they try it again. And they might fail again and they try it again. That's the one I want. So if I'm sitting on, like, I love regionals when I can go, or championships when I can go and I can sit on your bench and I'm like, hey, why don't you try this next time you're in? And you see them try it and they fail. And even if they come in, they're like, but it didn't work. And you're like, yeah, but you tried it immediately in a game situation. That's huge to me.
Alicia, I'm sure a lot of the same stuff, but when you think about a well-rounded athlete, what comes to mind for you?
I really like looking for athletes with that game vision, and they're students of the game where they can be in the water and they not only know what's happening, but what's about to happen. And when you bring athletes together from across the nation for, say, the cadet team, you're not playing within the normal, we practice together every day, so I know what she does. Instead, it's, I know general water polo and I watch a lot of film and I study the game and I know what's going to happen because I can see the opportunity.
And to build off of that, you know, and Kristin was talking about kind of the idea of being coachable, but at the level that you are all coaching in this ODP system, the kids that are there are typically pretty motivated, right? If you're going to go to these extra levels of training and practice and travel. So Alicia, you have somebody, they want it so bad, right? They want to be on the team. Pick me, evaluate me, tell me what to do. How do you find that balance between they're really driven, but they also have to just kind of like let the game exist and come to them? They can't always will it to happen.
Right. And that's that difficult balance that as an athlete trying to see what's happening and make the next pass for the assist that scores the easy goal rather than muscling your shot in the cage. That's a good highlight of someone who knows the game and knows the flow.
Taylor, you're seeing athletes, at all levels, right? From that elite, of course, the college game, but also in that developmental group or World University games. When you think well-rounded, what comes to mind for you?
I think what comes to mind first to me is that they're involved in every play. Definitely from the recruiting side, there are some girls that you notice hustling, not just on offense because they think they have an opportunity to score, but they're pressing high in the lane so the ball doesn't get to their player. Really making sure that they're involved in every play, I think is the definition of what I think of when I think well-rounded.
Excellent. So a good kind of breakdown there. If you think about what athletes can really focus on, some of the basics, right? The coachability thing I love because that's a thing that really, regardless of your skill, if you're willing to do it, it can be a thing that you can kind of start today, right? You can start being coachable today. Taylor, I'll stick with you. Fundamentals. Anytime we do an Instagram Live on USA Water Polo, regardless of the conversation, you could say we're going to talk about the 1980 Olympic boycott, and someone in the comments is like, how do I get my legs better? Like, how do I work on my on my pass or my lob shot? Taylor, when you think about fundamentals, what's number one? Where does someone have to start? They play water polo, but what's the thing they really should make sure they're good at?
I think something that is maybe underrated is ball handling. You watch, I'm on Instagram and Twitter all the time. And you see these amazing videos of these young kids, teenagers, older people with soccer balls doing crazy tricks, basketballs, ping pong balls, all these things. And I think that the more you can do with a water polo ball, the more dangerous you're going to be. And especially now when pool time is kind of hit or miss, or maybe you're in the pool, but you're only swimming, get a ball and play around with it. I think that is something that I've been preaching to my team currently, all of quarantine and all summer. But I think that's a huge piece that is completely on your own time and can be really fun as you're getting better.
It's interesting. People will ask me sometimes, what's the big difference between, say, even a good college team and like elite Olympic national team? And there's a lot of things, but I always point to like, watch a 6-on-5, the ball doesn't hit the water. Like the really good teams, the ball is never on the water. They're unless they want it to be, right? So to your point, passing is huge. Alicia, what's something you'd focus on when you're talking about fundamentals?
I always look for ability to move over your hips. So to change direction, to close out on someone on defense, to crash back on defense, moving over your hips makes you able to change direction and be more active all the time. And it's a really hard skill to master. So
Kristin, how about you? What's another fundamental?
I like the over the hip. Ball handling over the hips, definitely. I was going to say the horizontal to vertical, which is similar to what Alicia was saying. And honestly, even what Taylor was saying, getting the ball up and not having to use it to get up, right? Having that flotation device, I think, is a big one.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the things that you all hit on it's funny. I thought someone was going to just dive right in and say legs, right? Like, and make that number one, because so often people focus on that. A lot of what you all talked about, though, legs are kind of a foundational piece to that. And it's something people ask about often. So I'll kind of just get your take on it, going around the horn here again. Taylor, I'll come back to you. To get better leg strength, is it just simply tread a bunch, swim a bunch? What have you asked people to do when you were playing? What'd you work on? How do you get better at having strong legs?
I think that you really need to be diverse in your leg training. Just like how there's not going to be the same play ever in a game. You're in water and you're suspended and your legs are moving in all different directions. You have to be able to go vertically, horizontally, laterally, on a 45-degree angle, on a 50-degree angle. So the more that you can change it up, the better. I'm a big fan of having kicking in our conditioning workouts, really just putting that emphasis on, like with a breaststroke kick, even like flutter kick, doing whatever you can do to get as diverse leg work in as you can.
Alicia, is there something you found that works really well to kind of improve leg strength?
I think Taylor's exactly right that the diversity of leg strength is so important. But just continually making sure that you're on your base, that you're getting on your legs in drills. There's leg work built into everything that you do if you try and activate your legs. You know, it's really easy, like Kristin said, to float on a ball and then get up and shoot. But in a game, you're expected to catch at your highest point, or you're expected to shoot at your highest point and do it together in combination. So doing that in your every practice every day seems like the most effective way to me.
And, you know, as we're talking fundamentals, and Alicia, you were talking about it earlier, right? With certain areas of the country getting a chance to train, but really not many places getting back to full water polo. And almost in a silver lining of all this madness, right? You can force everyone to focus on fundamentals more because you're in your own lane. You can't really be playing. Does that open up an opportunity to focus on the fundamentals maybe more than you would have?
Oh, I think it's huge. Absolutely, because you're confined to your 6-foot bubble and you can't go near someone. So coaches have to get really creative of the drills that you're running. But if you're out there on your own, doing things that improve your fundamentals will make your game explode.
Kristin, your thoughts on kind of improving leg strength, just building up your kind of water polo core better?
Yeah, I think honestly, before all this, what I was working on with one of my teams was the ability to get to your highest point and then continue moving your legs going down rather than like the breaststroke kick sink idea that so many of us will do, or the breaststroke kick float. So just something to where like be explosive, but then trying to maintain. And yeah, exactly. I think that this honestly gives us a chance to work on fundamentals and focus on ourselves and while we're in the water. And that's something, I mean, just working on, I think like pull cords. Honestly, we brought one home to our house, pull cord, and just tread as far as you can and hold that position for a while. Like that takes nobody else but, you know, something, a pull cord and yourself. So.
Yeah, and this is where I'm obligated to plug the USA Water Polo coaching app, because there are like 100+ videos of physically distant workouts that you can do. So if you're thinking like, I can get back in the pool, but I'm not really playing a game, there's a lot of stuff to work on. And then when the games start, you'll be super fit and you'll have your water polo fundamentals down pat. Let's talk outside of the pool. This kind of circles back a little bit to the coachability, but it comes up all the time when teams are being selected. There is something to be said for the way a group gels, right? It's not always just about picking an all-star team of the people who can score all the goals. There is that personality thing. There are, you know, we've talked to many Olympians in the past who tell you like half the reason I made the team was because I can get along well with everyone else. You know, in addition to my great skill, I'm also not a detriment to what this group is trying to do. Kristin, as you help assemble a team, what stands out to you when you think about someone who's good in the out of the water stuff, being part of the squad?
I mean, it's really cool again because of the age group that we have, right? Because they're learning that about themselves, like the maturity level, like they're definitely learning about themselves, but you see that leadership without like by action. I value that. And a lot of people think when you do leadership, you have to be the vocal one, you have to be the one sending messages, and it's by your action. Like you were working hard in practice the whole time. You weren't waiting for coach to yell out like, let's make this more game-like, or, you know, you weren't waiting just for the scrimmage. You were working hard in all of the drills, and that really picks up practice for everything. In terms of being inclusive, you know, we talked about being in state and out of state. There's some girls that they know each other really well. And so that one that opens up their body while they're speaking, like that's huge. That's a really good characteristic to have. And it's just something that's so minor that can allow somebody to feel included into the team right off the bat. And that's really important. We can go into travel and just being a good roommate as well. But when it comes to, being that teammate out of the water, honestly, it's just being, again, open and just making sure that everybody's involved.
To kind of go off of what you were talking about a bit, because you've all described, you bring together people from around the country. They maybe don't know each other that well. They're not familiar with maybe your style of coaching. How much rope do they get? How much to kind of understand the way things should go? How do you work that process with them? Because I'm thinking of the athlete or the parent that's watching this and is saying like, I know my kid wants to do the right thing, but they honestly don't know. They've never been in this environment. So what's the process? How much room do they get to get better?
I think they get I would say a decent amount. a lot of times for our team, we try and figure out who fits really well on the right side versus the left side. And then, center defender, like generally that's kind of your home. But for the right side, left side, it's, they might take a shot and it might be the wrong opportunity and we get countered. But I think that we try and put a team together that's going to help balance each other and really make sure that mistakes are going to happen. We all have to be on the same page to cover up for them. Like, I want you to try. I want you to be open to try that out. And then we're going to see what happens. But it's important for mistakes to happen. And as a team to watch and see how we can cover up for each other when they do happen. So I think that there's quite a bit of room for figuring it out. As long as, like I said, coachability and learning from mistakes, or from, maybe the shot goes in and a coach still says something to you because it might have been the wrong time and thank goodness it went in, but just learning from that. But I definitely think that I really enjoy watching our team develop and learn how to cover up for each other, and rather than maybe slowly come back because they weren't happy with that decision. So I think there's a decent amount of room for growth.
We're talking athlete development here with 3 of our great Olympic development program coaches. Lots of good comments here. Lots of fans of the coaches in this chat on our Facebook comments. So Alicia, you got a shout out here from Joanne East. We got people from Dallas, Bonaire Island in the Caribbean. They're watching. They're enjoying what we're talking about here. So we're worldwide here on the USA Water Polo Facebook page. We were getting into the topic of what makes a good teammate, a good athlete outside of the pool. Taylor, I'll come back to you. Coaches, after the day of practice, they kind of maybe gather in the hotel room and break down, hey, how did practice go today and who's doing what? What are the things that athletes do that stand out where it's like, you know what, Joe Smith or Tammy, whatever, they're doing things to be a good part of this team?
I think I get a unique view of that as the manager on the youth team, because I get to either be a part of different groups doing drills every day, or just I get to see the athletes in a different view, and you can really tell who's really listening. I think that goes a long way. Kristin touched on this earlier, but when just like body positioning when you're listening, I think that's huge. And like who's really focused in on the coaches when they're talking. Who's the first one who is dressed and ready to go? I always notice the first person. Same thing, like to the vans. If you're at a camp or something, like if you're the first ready to go, that's noticeable. If you are always last, that's also very noticeable. And I think that those little things go a long way. So just to have yourself together so that you can help the team, I think is the really the most important thing. And those little things go a long way.
And Taylor, what's that process like for the younger athletes to kind of connect those dots, right? Because you're talking about the travel, being on time to the van or the bus, or showing up to breakfast on time. A newer player or a developing player, maybe they don't associate that with what I do in the pool, right? But as you know from being on teams and coaching them, right, that is the sign of someone who's totally bought in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it completely is the sign of someone who's bought in. And I think there's totally a learning curve. If it's your first camp, and it can be really overwhelming. There's a ton of athletes, and a lot of them do know each other. They've been doing ODP and going to these camps for years. And if it's your first one, it can be very daunting. But I think, being observant, looking around and kind of seeing, okay, it's pretty noticeable, I would say, who's doing the right thing. Sometimes it's hard to tell what the right and the wrong thing are, but in a lot of situations, I think at our camps, it's pretty clear who's doing the right thing, and so to emulate those people, I think, if you know that a girl has been to this camp, 6 or 7 times and made the roster, the travel roster the year before, watch her, see what she's doing, see how she interacts with her teammates and how she interacts with the coaches, and pick up those cues and even ask. I think that is something that's huge too. And girls, sometimes we get a little shy and are afraid to put ourselves out there, but asking people what they should be doing is huge. And early is on time. If you're on time, you're late. So just stick by that rule. And I think that's a good place to start.
Definitely. Alicia, on this same note, what is always, when you think about a good teammate, how would you describe that? You know, if you think back in all your time in water polo, what are the characteristics?
I think one of the most noticeable traits is someone who's there for others in a difficult situation. And you can see it on team benches a lot. The girl who gets out of the water and maybe just made the best play of her life, but is still encouraging and there for her teammates, or vice versa. She just made the worst play of her life, in her opinion. She gets out and she's pumped for her team, and she's there and she's present and she's watching the game. You can see a lot of athletes' attention spans start to wander sometimes during games because there's interesting things on the pool deck. But that athlete who's bought in and cheering for the team and really just present makes a big difference.
I'm so glad you brought up the bench, because that's a great thing to talk about. Alicia, what should people be doing on the bench? What does a engaged, supportive bench look like, regardless of the score?
To be engaged on a team bench is to be watching the team and listening to your coach, but also interacting with your teammates and giving them that little extra of what they need, whether it's a congratulations or it's a hey, you're doing all right, or whatever. And it's individualized, and that's a really good personality trait, to know what someone needs, but to really be watching the game and listening to the coaching. And like Kristin and Taylor have both said, absorbing what your coach is saying is such a good attribute.
We're talking here about athlete development with 3 of our Olympic development program coaches. Anyone who has questions, feel free to leave them in the Facebook live chat. We'll kind of mix up the order here a bit. So Alicia, I'll start back with you here on this next question. And this is what is so fun to see. If you go to the ODP events year over year, if you go to a camp and then a regional and then a national, where you see that growth, right? And you see someone really, they take the instruction you're offering and they make that jump. Alicia, what are some of the ways you've seen an athlete really make that leap from, and it can be a number of levels, right? Maybe they were, you know, on the bench on their high school team and now they're starting, or they were on the B club and now they're on the A club, they travel more, that sort of thing. What are some of the ways you've seen people make that leap?
You know, one of it is that development as a female athlete, because we coach females, the 3 of us. As you're growing up, you're growing into your body and you're learning your how to move your limbs and your whole body well. And the more you can do it and the more you work on those fundamentals, the more comfortable you are in a game. And typically that causes that big leap. I think also listening to coaching and realizing what is needed on a team, like to become the secret sauce of a team. If someone needs a center defender and you have pretty strong legs, why not go try it? And maybe you'll be that star center defender the following year.
And then Alicia, as a coach, and this is something I want everyone to kind of think about too, but one of the reasons you're in this, right, is to help athletes get better. So for you, how rewarding is it? What is that feeling like when you see someone, they kind of put it together, they put the pieces to the puzzle together, and you're like, yes, they got it.
It's like that 2 hands up in the air cheer, like, you did it. Like, that is so awesome. And it's one of the better parts of coaching.
Taylor, similar athletes making that leap, they want to improve, they follow the instruction. What does it look like when they actually do it?
I think it, again, another comment that Kristin brought up earlier, but I think that confidence, and whether they're 15, 17, 21, having the confidence in themselves that they know they've put in the work, they know they've made adjustments, they know that they've listened to their coaches, their teammates, and just having a little bit more faith in their own abilities and being willing to fail, but then going back out and trying it again and then succeeding the next time. I think that is really what kind of that I think really helps like take the biggest leap. Is that self-confidence.
Taylor, if you think back to when you were playing, how much does, when you played, having a coach that like saw that in you or believed in you kind of inform the way you try and offer that to a younger player?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, I think I take pieces from every coach that I've either worked with or who coached me, taking the things that I like and emulating it, but then also realizing that each of my players needs a different kind of attention. I think that, there are some girls who I have to talk to every day, because that is going to help them. That's going to help get the most out of them at training. And then other ones who, I can leave alone, because it's only going to make things worse. But definitely understanding your players and what kind of makes them tick and what's going to help them be the most successful. And then just trying to execute that as best I can.
Kristin, same question as the other two, but what it looks like to see an athlete make that big progression.
What it looks like. Well, I was going to first talk about like mastery of
Sure.
your skills. So I think that going in and really focusing on, that one or two types of shots for being a center or being a center defender. And there's a lot of drills. And like you said, you can work on these at home right now. There's a lot of drills that you can do. And there's a lot of ways to get around in front. And there's a lot of, but if you can do that in one or two ways, like really focusing on that, that's where I've noticed the biggest jump from somebody who is trying to be or fill that position versus who has made it and filled that position. So, and again, it's confidence. So it's just going off of what everybody else said. And then, there's plenty of times where Alicia and I, especially just working on the same team, going in and, we see these girls age up and we're like, okay, we know they have this, and then we watch them age up and they're like, they did it. And it's really exciting for us, especially if they change position, like for 14, 15 years old, there might be a time where, you're currently a center and we might have switched you to become a center defender for us. And then seeing them progress and move forward. And then even into college, it's really, it's awesome to see them embrace that and really work toward that.
Excellent. Really, really good thoughts here from everyone. Thanks everyone for kind of tuning in and watching, and hopefully you kind of picked up some important stuff, whether you're in the ODP system or not, or maybe this entices you to give it a try. This is some of the stuff that you'll be working on, and some of the ways you can kind of focus on becoming a better athlete. I feel like a lot of this applies to any team you might be on, really, in almost any sport when you're talking about being coachable and that sort of thing. Before we go, I'd be kind of remiss if we didn't acknowledge that it's great that we're talking to 3 female coaches, right, in a sport that needs more female coaches. We would love to see more women that play water polo go on to coach water polo. Kristin, I'll kind of come back to you. This has been a time over the last 5-6 months where I think it's been made very clear across the board representation matters in whatever area you're talking about. How important for you was it when you were younger to see a female coach and now to be a female coach coaching women?
Oh man, so I didn't have a female coach going through the process, and I think that it changes. I remember in college, one of my coaches, I had a few throughout college, and one of my coaches, was like, hey, why aren't we doing this? I think we can push a little bit harder. I was that player. And he's like, I don't know. I'm worried. They might get hurt, and it was just this, we're delicate flowers. I don't know. It was, I don't think that we got pushed to our full potential. And then there's obviously the opposite of that. So I think it's very powerful. I think just showing that what we're capable of doing as females, as female athletes, just knowing, I think we move differently. I think we throw differently. I think the game is played differently. Trying to talk to your coach and say, she's holding my suit, how do I get out of it? And their response is, you just do. And so, it's not exactly what you're looking for, but really being able to, or even get in there and try and show, they're holding me like this, how do I do that? And just having that experience it's unique. And I think it's needed. Right. And just, there's just relating on a mental level, or just knowing, like having that reassurance. I've been there, or I understand, and we're going to work through it together because we understand.
Well, Alicia, all good. Alicia, you just talked about the idea of like young women growing into their bodies, right? It's gonna resonate a lot more coming from you than from an older male coach. So to that same line of thinking, right? The importance of being a woman coach, coaching women, was that an experience you had when you were younger? Why is it important to you now?
I had a terrific assistant coach in college who was a female, and not only did I look up to her and respect what she had to say, but she was also in some ways our friend in college, a coach friend, and now is a good friend of mine and a mentor of mine. But I think that the time that I really wanted decided I wanted to be a strong woman coaching young women was watching Natalie Benson on a pool deck in the Northeast Zone. It was my first ODP camp and I was so nervous. And she was the national team coach there. And, you know, Natalie has this great personality that shines through as she knows X's and O's better than anyone, you know, and I loved that her personality was there for the girls along with the X's and O's. And that was the moment I was like, dang, I want to do that.
Never hurts to kind of learn from a legend there on the pool deck, right?
Yeah.
Someone who did it well in the pool and on the deck as well. Taylor, you know, as a college coach as well, right? Part of this is a small group, right? One that should be larger, but just kind of the idea of being one of those people that others can kind of look up to in a group that will hopefully grow across the board, not just college, but ODP, high school, club, all of it.
Yeah, I think it definitely carries some weight. I think the importance of having people who you can look up to in positions of authority is really important. And you know, our understanding of building our relationships with our athletes, being there for them as people first and as athletes second, I think is what is going to help grow female coaches in our sport. And it's something that I know we all take very seriously, and it's definitely not anything that any of us take for granted. But like you said, I hope that it can keep growing. I'm going to steal from one of my colleagues here at Indiana, our softball coach. She posts all the time that, like, if you can see her, you can be her. And I think that, you know, that resonates so well with me every day. And, you know, the more strong, confident, eloquent, caring, you know, devoted women that we have in powerful coaching positions, the better our sport is off.
Well said. Really appreciate all three of you being here. Thanks everyone for joining us on the Facebook Live. We'll of course share this as well on the USA Water Polo YouTube page. And if you want more information about the Olympic Development Program, you can go to usawaterpolo.org. But that'll wrap things up for us here. More tomorrow. We'll talk with Brian Alexander on mental skills and approaches for athletes and parents in the sport of water polo. So come back and join us for that, and have a great rest of your day.